On this episode of Inside Discovery, we're teaming up with Rachel and Wayne for a dive into the Shark Reef exhibit. We'll also hang out with Dr. Sam as he gives Theodore, one of the Science Center's otters, his annual checkup. But first, we're going to catch up with Miranda as she works with the center's maned wolves on crate training for upcoming travel.
So today we are going to show you their crate training, and that is to get ready for the transport because they are going to be going to new facilities. So you'll kind of see the steps that it took to get them where they are and understand why we're doing this training. So maned wolves are pretty skittish in general, so we've been working on this for almost 2 months now. Just bringing the crate into the building was super scary for them, so you kind of start with just rewarding them for even acknowledging the crate is there and make it not so scary. And then you kind of build on those steps, so anything that they're willing to give me, whether it's just one paw in the crate or 2 paws in the crate, you're rewarding every single thing until eventually they understand that they are putting their whole body into that crate. These guys are super smart and they're super food motivated, so they do catch on to things pretty quickly. The problem is if you change like one thing, it kind of throws them off for a little while. So what I try to do is maybe close a different door one day or open a different door one day to get them used to those random changes just in case, because you never know what's going to happen the day of, you know. So just kind of play around with it and see. Great. Girl Stella, you're a good girl. Just to make this process a lot less scary for them and for us, obviously animal transports can be very stressful. Same with veterinarian procedures. So any training that we can do to kind of make that less stressful for the animal and for ourselves is a good thing.
To make sure that our exhibits are as clean and beautiful as possible. So not only our animals will be happy and healthy, but so that we can show beautiful exhibits to our visitors. In Shark Reef, we do a few dives a week, and then we also do dives on rotation through the expansion every week. We love having volunteer divers come in because as aquarists, we have a lot on our plate, making sure that every animal in this aquarium is happy and healthy and well fed and gets everything that it needs. And so our volunteer divers come in and work with us to help with some of our diving duties to make sure that we can keep things as beautiful as we like them to be.
I'm Wayne Young, and I am one of the volunteer scuba divers here at the Greensboro Science Center. So I've been scuba diving since I was a teenager. You have to be scuba certified and some experience behind you before you're really ready to start scuba diving in this tank. Although it's only 14.5 feet deep, you need to have the skills to deal with whatever you would normally scuba diving. I've been a volunteer here for over a decade. I've only been diving here for about 6 years or so. The onboarding was pretty extensive at first because unlike what you will see in the video, we were using full face masks with an umbilical that went to the surface. So very different gear, and I had to learn how to use that gear specifically. But it was really a lot of fun to learn some new skills as a diver, and of course the most fun was just learning what I'm going to do with the kids and speaking to the kids.
Nicole is our dive safety officer, so she runs our dive program, but today she was our standby diver. So just in case there was an emergency, she would be up top and able to respond to give first aid, CPR, whatever was needed, and then also call for help. When you're scuba diving, a diver always wants to have a second diver as a dive buddy. So it's really a safety measure to make sure that we are both safe and secure, and if anything should possibly go wrong, that we are there to help each other and be safe. Before every dive, we do a pre-dive meeting, and we go through an entire checklist to make sure that we have all of our gear, that everyone is well rested and healthy and able to participate. And then we just go through all of those things together to make sure everyone is on the same page. Because once again, we want to do everything as safely and securely as possible.
We are not allowing the crowds to build up in front of the glass, which means I can't talk with the kids. Before, we would actually have a microphone in my mask so I could speak to the kids and tell them what I'm doing and about the animals. They would get to ask questions, and we'd try to answer those questions. But because of COVID, we're trying to be more cautious about people grouping together. I really miss talking with the kids, though. So the most common question that I get is, why aren't the sharks eating you while you're in the scuba tank? So the fact is that our sharks are very well fed, and they're also used to the people being in the tank. So they're not going to be nervous about us being in there. And finally, sharks by nature are a little bit lazy. They're not going to go after a healthy fish or human if they know they're going to get easier food. In the wild, they're the ones that clean up the dying or injured fish. So they serve a really important function in the wild. The only advice I would give you if you wanted to be a volunteer scuba diver here would be first to volunteer as a docent. Get to know the place and the people here. They're all working so hard behind the scenes, and it's such a pleasure to be a part of that team. But beyond that, get some experience scuba diving. You certainly want to be comfortable while you're in the water with a bunch of sharks and eels. So it's important to have that experience ahead of time.
So if you are interested in becoming a volunteer diver, head over to greensboroscience.org, and there is a link you can follow to become part of our dive team.
Today we're looking at Theodore, our 7-year-old intact male Asian small-clawed otter. Theodore was due for his annual exam, which he gets a full physical exam every other year. So as part of that annual exam, he gets rabies and distemper vaccines. We take a little blood sample to check for his organ values, look at his red blood cell count, white blood cell count. We'll take some x-rays, ultrasound his abdomen because we want to look at his kidneys and liver specifically, and a dental cleaning. He did have a couple incisors we had to take out. They were very loose and had a good bit of tartar calculus built up around the root of them, so they were ready to come. And honestly, most of our otters are missing quite a few of their front incisors for whatever reason. Well, this is for all of our animals here. This is kind of routine that we always clean their teeth and do a thorough check over when we have them out. Their diet, we try to approximate as close to what they would experience in the wild, but there may be something that's slightly different from that causes perhaps an increase in the dental calculus, but I haven't looked at a wild otter's mouth, so I can't tell you for sure. He looks great. Theodore is slightly overweight, so we're working with the keepers on adjusting his diet down a little bit. He is cute and roly-poly, but he could stand to lose a few grams. So next year he'll get a visual exam, and then after that we'll do another full knockdown for exam. So we try to give him a little bit of a break between anesthetic events. In the brand new Shear Animal Health Center, all of our guests will be able to come in and look into the window and see what we're up to, and we'll be mic'd up. We can talk and answer questions, and it's going to be a really fascinating experience. We can't wait. So today we're looking at our African penguin colony. We split it up into 2 days because we have so many birds, but everybody's getting their annual exam checked. So we do a full physical exam. We're collecting blood on certain animals. We only check that every other year, so some of them lucked out this year. Yeah, just the once over, and there are a few beak trims that need to be done as well. So this, just like all of our animals in our collection, we do annually. These guys are easy to grab up. They don't need anesthesia for us to handle them. So we do them every year as opposed to every other year with some of the more dangerous species. So everybody really looks healthy and good to go today. There are a few areas on the feet that we keep an eye on. So bumblefoot is a condition that we readily monitor in these guys to make sure they don't pick up, which is basically a pressure sore on the plantar surface of the foot that can get infected. Things we do to prevent that from happening are change up of substrates in the environment, making sure they have nice concentrated salt water because that helps dry those up. But we see it most often this time of year when the animals are molting. The reason being is generally they won't get in the water during that time. They shed their feathers, and so they'll get kind of chilled out if they went into the water. So they spend a lot more time just hanging out on the beach. So next steps, if we do find any abnormalities in the blood work, will really depend on what that abnormality is and how we progress down the ladder of steps as to what condition we might be hunting for. One issue of concern in captive penguins is aspergillosis, which is a fungal infection. So we can sometimes see some changes in the white blood cell count, and there's some special blood work we can do if we were suspecting of that. None of the clinical signs of any of our birds today would hint that they have any respiratory issues, but it's something that we'll look for sure with what we got today. In the room with us today are Sam Andreski, my technician. We have Austin and Talia, who are two pre-veterinary students who have worked with us a lot in the past, and they're just shadowing for the day. Additionally, we have two keeper staff, one who's kind of the primary and one who's our kind of in training on penguin handling. When we had Shannon, our previous penguin keeper, she became the penguin mama. In general, obviously, it's great to have the animal's primary keeper there that knows those animals best, knows their personalities. So when we're looking at them, they can be like, hey, maybe don't get too close to this one's face. She might try for you. So yeah, and that individual's usually going to be better at holding that animal for us because we're specialists in doing the medical exams and collecting samples and whatnot. They're the specialists in those animals and in the restraint, husbandry, all those things. So they're crucial for the process.
Nesting season actually runs a pretty long stretch of time. So we start to see what we would call really active behaviors kind of towards the end of August, and the season can stretch through the end of January, and then we actually kind of manually cut it off at that point, and we do that by sort of not allowing them to have access to nest boxes anymore. So we actually do kind of our own custom design here that works with the built-in access tunnels that we have in our rock work that you can see from the front of exhibit. And so on the back side of that wall with that boulder facade, we have the round PVC tunnels, and we actually use kind of your typical cat-dog kennel carriers, and we actually prefer the plastic ones, and we cut a circular hole in the back of those where we actually have the door of that kennel facing out for keepers to access behind the wall. And so we can butt up that door, and that's their nest box. And then we give them some materials so they can start building their nest with rocks, and kind of, we do like artificial, like long pieces of plastic tubing and fake plants, so they can grab those materials and build their nest. And all of that's easily cleanable because they're very messy during this period. So the reason that we want to promote kind of a healthy breeding colony here is to have a sustainable population of African penguins throughout actually our entire country. And we do that through what's AZA's SSP program, or Species Survival Program. And so what we want to do is have we want to have a good number of animals that have good genetic diversity to meet all of the needs of other facilities for their exhibits. And the African Penguin SSP is actually one of the most successful programs, and we've had really good success with having many, many chicks born throughout all of the different facilities that house them in our country. And there's always a very high need for more penguins because they do best in a large flock. And so they're one of the species where there's actually like almost a waiting list of facilities because we can house 20, 30, 40 in a large colony. And so it's a great program to help support. Penguins are awesome.
Yeah.